Happy Monday evening, everybody, and welcome to the Nona Boss Continuum. And tonight with me again, I have Mr. Mark Fiorentino with me, and we are going to have an important conversation tonight. We are going to be we're going to be talking some scientific stuff. But Mark is always so amazing about being able to break it down for all of us laymen's. And I just love his delivery. I love his energy. And he's such an amazing guest. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. I just want to say hi to everybody. And then I will introduce Mark and bring him up. So let's see. We've got Gary Spike Sr. in the house. We also have Mr. Brown Dwarf in the house tonight. And we've got Raymond. How are you, Raymond? Good to see you. Miss Catherine Gay, how are you? And I know, I'm pretty sure I did. There is Miss Sue. How are you doing, Miss Aussie Sue? And we have Lenny in here tonight. And Mr. Brian Barber. We've got Shim's Camera at Dawn. I love that. I love that name. And did I miss anybody? I know there's going to be more people filing in here in just a moment. Did I miss anybody? AJ. Hi, AJ. Good to see you as well. So let me see, make sure I didn't miss anybody. And I just want to say, before the show starts, I want to say a big, huge thank you to all of my my members of the channel. Patrick, hi Patrick, good to see you. And the members of my channel and all of you who have been supporting me through super chats and super stickers. I just want to thank you guys so much for that. It really does help. I know people don't get it, but I'm telling you, it is not cheap to run a channel. And what you guys give to me in support is so greatly appreciated. And every single dime goes back into this channel. So I just want to thank you guys all so much for that. So let's introduce our guest. Mark Fiorentino is the author of Master of Reality, a book about the completion and solution of Einstein's unified field theory. For as long as he can remember, he's had an insatiable and unrelenting curiosity. He studied Albert Einstein's unified field theory when he was just 10 years old. He found it fascinating and became particularly intrigued by his discussions of this theory. As he learned more about the unified field theory, it seemed to be the most interesting thing he had ever encountered. Mark knew for sure that if he could understand this, then he would know the most important thing in the world of humans, the theory of everything. He has spent most of his life working in the high-tech industry. He was the lead technician on a technology known as GPE, the GPE Ring guidance processor electronics. This was a technology used to control the killer satellite missile we designed along with Vought Industries and the Air Force. He also worked for IBM for 16 years, troubleshooting computer systems and hardware. He's a self-taught computer programmer and used that knowledge to develop a program that diagnosed faulty electronic circuit boards. Mark retired in early 2016 to compile all of his notes concerning the study of the history of physics, focusing on Einstein and his research. He continued to study the unified field theory problem. Step by step, he found clues hidden in the past. Eventually, he was able to compile the clues into a set of concepts and would lead him to realize that both special and general relativity just needed to be extended a little to achieve Einstein's dream of the completed unified field theory as he first envisioned it. The unification of electromagnetism to gravity. It has been achieved. Without further ado, please welcome Mark Fiorentino.
Hello.
So glad to have you.
It's good to be here. We're gonna learn some cool stuff tonight, and some very exciting stuff as I've been
Yes.
working on my theory of the slip wave,
Yes.
and I've updated it from the book. The book version 1.0, I call it now, is somewhat incomplete. It was very close. I had everything laid out very well, but
Mm.
there was a few things I really didn't see and understand until the idea of Slipwave 2.0, the final version, the one that explains particle motion as well as how it can be used to build starships that can break the light speed barrier.
Oh,
So
that's a
there we
big
are.
statement. That's a big statement to start right off. I love it.
It is big, and I'm working on it right now. So we're in the process of making history, and so the folks tonight are going to get to see the guy that solves this big problem and be able to say someday, I saw that guy on the Nona Boss.
That's
I
right.
remember that. He was talking about the slip wave and now they proved it and so
Right.
forth. That's going to happen
Yeah.
because when I'm going to upload this paper and hopefully I'm not going to get silenced because of what's in it because it's got anti-gravity technologies figured out completely. So we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to have to be brave and push forward on this.
got, got my fingers crossed for you. Be praying for you as well. Sending good vibes always, always. So, okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Like, what
Okay.
is a slip wave?
Well, I after I had done the paper for solving the gravity problem, the main type of gravity, contractive gravity, the gravity that planets use, and so forth, I eventually got around while I was experimenting in the lab trying to figure out how the anti-gravity worked. I thought I had it. I got a signal, what I call, of anti-gravity, where I thought the device under measure was becoming lighter. But I noticed if I switched the magnet pole around, it got heavier. I said, wait a minute, I'm not expecting that. That doesn't make sense. And for weeks, I kept playing around with the magnets. I had built this device, what I call a magnetovortex drive, and it was rotating magnetic field in a centered magnet.
Mhm.
And I had two sets of different poles. When I turned on the center one, uh, with the North Pole facing up, it was like attractive. And then I would turn on the South Pole spinning, and then it would become repulsive. And I said, this doesn't make sense. So I worked on it and started thinking, well, maybe it's possible that a gravity wave emitter, an anti-gravity wave emitter, also has an end that puts out another form of gravity. And I thought, wow, there's something that nobody's thought of, a
Mhm.
second version of gravity that goes along with anti-gravity, and it has to do with the dipoles, either magnetic or electrostatic. When I say dipoles, I mean North Pole, South Pole, negative, positive. Those are dipoles, right?
Mhm.
And but when I looked at it, and I could show you something here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this here. Oh boy.
Do you do you have a do you have it like in a PDF or something you can email
I
me?
can have it if I could share the screen. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
if you could, yeah, if right on the bottom where it says present, if
yeah.
you click,
Well, we'll give it a try.
yeah,
Share share
and then
screen.
uh-huh, and then you have it pulled up, and then I can put it into the stream.
Select a tab to share. Chrome tab, window. Uh, okay. There it
And then,
is. That's the one I want to share.
okay, okay, perfect. Here it comes.
That.
All right.
You
There
see,
we go.
that's the program I wrote. And see this thing in the middle here?
Mm-hmm.
This is cardioid shape.
I
Now,
see
why
that.
is that is important? Well, Bob Lazar mentioned, and for years I had listened to his interviews and I thought, why does he keep talking about gravity wave? He's talking as if this anti-gravity device is outputting gravity as well. And matter of fact, he talks about it more. And he says the shape of the field is a cardioid shape. And if you see the way I have the lines of force drawn here,
Mm-hmm.
actually it's reverse of what you would see if you looked at for magnets or electrostatic fields. They're reversed because I says if my measurements are meaning something here, it's implying that the lines of force are actually reversed from what we think they are today. So I began to look into the past to see if somebody made an error. And son of a gun, if I didn't find where back when Benjamin Franklin first discovered electricity, he decided, or he took a guess and said the current flow comes from the positive and goes to the negative. He guessed wrong. It was reversed. It's called conventional current flow. And all of our drawings and all of our stuff for the next 150 years uses the wrong direction for current flow. So that means they got the lines of force reversed. Everything that we have in the textbooks today technically is
Is
incorrect.
wrong.
Yes. Uh, but physicists know about this and they kind of shuffle. It's not a big deal. It was just arbitrarily picked. We could work with it either way, but it's wrong if you're working with trying to discover gravity and anti-gravity coming from. You've got to actually know which way the direction of the lines of force going. What I've got shown in this is the program I've written here, is
Mm-hmm.
the lines of force properly drawn. So that makes sense that space is being pulled in from the north of the positive pole, pulled all the way through, and then comes out the back. So that since Newton's law of the third law says for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, that motion, that movement of space, deformation, pulling it that way, makes the particle go the other way forward. So it's going like, as I have the arrow here, the particle actually goes like that because it's an attractive force here and a repulsive force here. So now anti-gravity, the emitters that are used in UFOs, they put out the same waveform. And Bob Lazar confirmed it. He says, this thing puts out a cardioid waveform. Now I know why it does that. It's because of the way the direction, the lines of force. And to further back that up, that positive is the attractive end of the anti-gravity wave emitters, the slip wave, spatial bias drive is what I call it, um, is because of the direction of the lines of force coming out of the electrostatic field in this particular case, uh, cause the whole structure to move in a direction opposite of the deformation of the space that is bent by the electrostatic field or the magnetic field. And to further bolster that idea, there was a guy called Thomas Townsend Brown who discovered that oh, an electrostatic field in a capacitor could cause a thrust upwards. And he noticed that you had to put the North Pole on the top and the South Pole on the bottom, which then now confirms again what I'm saying. There's evidential proof that that is critical, that the lines of force are indeed reversed. And he's confirming as well that there's a polarized field that's involved here when it comes to anti-gravity. You've got gravity 2, which is an attractive force, and anti-gravity at the bottom. You're going to go up. You're going to float. It's going to neutralize the gravitational pull from the Earth entirely and replace it with this other field. So that's how the ship can be weightless, completely floating in space. Or and then if you up the ante and you up the field strength, you're going to get propulsion, and you're going to get very fast propulsion, because the electrostatic field, the electrogravitic model that I'm talking about, pulls space apart. And that gives another aspect to this field. There's a lot of stuff that I'm writing and putting into my paper now. It's making my head spin. And I have to walk away. I'm a retiree guy. The
Right.
mind is it's not as sharp as it used to be, and it's tough maintaining. It's like playing chess for 8 or 9 hours at a time. You have to
Right.
keep thinking. You have to stay focused. You have to put every thought in order, as I'm doing in this paper now. The paper that I'm writing is called "The Discovery and Theory of Anti-Gravity and Gravity 2." So that rounds out the final pieces of um, the unified field theory. Einstein never imagined really there was an anti gravity or a second type of gravity to contend
So
with.
anything that's inside this slip wave, so anything that's inside it just, I mean,
Yeah, I know
it
what
can
you're
take
getting at. It's like it is in its own realm, because the
wow.
gravity, what's so vitally important is that you have to break away from inertia. In ordinary gravity one, inertia and everything, it's because there's a contraction in space.
Hmm.
And that contraction leads to inertia, inertial drag, um, limitation of the maximum velocity. So there had to be another type that could allow the field, the slipwave field, to do what it needs to do in order to allow for greater than light speed without having the effects that are known to happen for
Then strong.
accelerating objects. If you accelerated a rocket to great speeds, you'll
Mhm.
feel gravity. It'll feel like gravity, as acceleration
All
and gravity are the kind of the same thing. You'll feel yourself being pulled back, getting heavier. Your ship will begin to contract in space, literally. Um, Time will begin to slow down. These are all become a problem at near light speed. When you get up to
mhm,
90 or plus percent, you're not going to survive that. Aliens are not going to survive that. That's why space has to be pulled apart using either a magnetic field, very powerful, or a very powerful electrostatic field, giving you that cardioid shape that I pointed out before. That's the
mhm,
new realm, because of the way space is pulled through and around and then back in, through and around and then back in. And this creates the push forward, and it changes permittivity and permeability. That's how you break free of inertia, of the things that would kill you if you try to accelerate at great
right.
speeds that this force field is really capable of doing. It drops permittivity and permeability of free space, which then changes the rules. The maximum velocity allowed
Mhm.
now goes up the more you drop those two. And the slipwave spatial bias drive does do that. And it's just what's needed. It's so intelligent design smacked. It's like, how could this be unless it was designed from the get-go like that? Because it's perfect. It's just what's needed to break the light speed barrier. Otherwise, no people on any planet would ever be able to escape their planet to see other worlds and other realms. We'd
Mhm.
all be trapped on our planets with no hope, no chance of ever getting off. Especially if there's a calamity coming your way, you got no option but to stay there and endure the death blow.
Mhm.
Now, emerging civilizations like us will be able to go to a second planet somewhere and establish a colony just in case something goes wrong here. And
So we
nobody,
you know, because we hear about a lot of, especially in this past year with the government's disclosure, soft disclosure, however people want to put it. We talk that, we hear a lot of people coming out about, like Dr. Greer, about that they already have this, off planetary craft and things like that. So we're hearing that, the rumblings of that. So is this how they're doing it already? Like they've cracked this code and they've pretty much are already doing this with humans?
this is got to be the way. This is the entry level technology that I'm describing. This is
Hmm.
emerging civilization makes this great discovery. It's the unified field theory, the full and complete version,
Hmm.
covers anti-gravity. And there's two methods they can use to build a starship. One is the high magnetic, much more difficult to build
Hmm.
because it requires enormous amounts of current, which now means you have to have superconducting wire, which I don't know that we have yet. If we do, it's been classified because without it, you have no chance of making a magnet strong enough
In
to
order to
to
do
get
that.
the anti-gravity and the gravity field. One that Bob Lazar worked on was electrogravitic. In those models, you use high voltage, really
Mhm.
high voltage. It's a bit more dangerous, but you seal it up and as they can do and have done,
Mhm.
it's fairly safe as well. And it's much easier to build and takes much less power than the magnetic kind. It's
Mhm.
going to be the kind I'm sure that if we have them built, that's what we're using right now because they're much easier to construct. Here's another picture of something here. I should really turn off my
Mhm.
where is that setting?
It's
Virtual background. It's messing me up.
well,
There,
there we go.
there's
Okay.
the flux liner. Uh,
And
right here
that's
is the flux liner by Mark
mhm.
McCandlish. Here is where the capacitor is that are underneath it. That are what I'm that drawing I showed you or the picture of that program.
Mhm.
It's it can be used to design this part right here, which is what's going to create the lift and the anti-gravity effect along with the gravitational effect. So gravity's coming out the top and anti-gravity's coming out the bottom. And this is a capacitor array within here. So that's the technology I'm talking about. That's the technology for the design I put into that program. And so people will be able to actually design lifters, very simple lifters using the math in that program that I shared.
Wow. Brown Dwarf, he's in the chat and he says, I wonder what his thoughts are on electrogravitics, which you just
Yes,
mentioned.
that's
So,
exactly what I'm talking about right now,
yeah.
electrogravitic. It's the easier one to build. I'm sure it's the one that we're using today because it's much, technically
Mhm.
speaking, easier to build and requires much less power. There's two fields that are used, the magnetic field and an electrostatic field. And
Mhm.
those fields can be used to generate the slip wave. They just have to be really large because gravity is really weak. So it requires a huge amounts of energy stored in those fields in order, and my math in that program that I showed you steps through the process from the energy stored in the field, converting it eventually into energy in joules, converting that because that is equal to mass, converting that into the equation that Newton uses, that has two sets of mass that represent now um, the the positive and the
Positive
negative
and negative.
mass,
I got you. Mhm.
and that
So
provides the thrust. So, yeah, we can do it, and everything is that we need to break the light speed barrier is in this program, is in this design. We can go as fast as we want. We can go to
mhm.
other star systems in a matter of minutes. Imagine going 25 or 30,000 times the speed of light. You're going to get to Proxima Centauri, 4.2 light years away, and in 15, 20 minutes. Just like in Star Trek. That's the
Which
only
is
way we can
which
get
is
around. Go ahead.
yeah, but I mean, if like, I mean, what you're saying is it really is groundbreaking because if this technology already exists and if Bob Lazar, I mean, he's been saying this for I don't even know what 30 years, 40 years, more maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had it they've had this technology for such a long time. It's like,
Yeah. At that
wow.
time, according, at least supposedly, according to Stephen Greer, solved technology, I think, in 1954 or something, like a year before I
Mhm.
was born. They had something doable and workable out there. I don't know. I know they got something for sure by now. I
Yeah.
know that because Bob was working on that one design, although they did not understand, he clearly did not understand how the power from the power source was getting to the emitters. I mean, that totally was mystified by that. They At that time they had no idea. It had to be transferred either in some way with using microwave technology or something, because he says there was no connecting cables, there was no wires at all.
It
the
was just on.
the emitters, yeah, once they were near the power source automatically turns on and pushed out the power to the devices, and through some sort of osmosis. And I'm sure they figured out how that worked years after
So
he was gone.
yeah, Spiritual Odyssey says watched a video where Dr. Greer said everything that we see in Star Trek has already been done. So who knows?
Yeah, the problem
So
is they're keeping it secret from the rest of us. So people like me have to reverse engineer it in our heads just from the
mhm.
little bit of evidence that's been out there, and wanting to solve the problem on our own. Um,
So let me ask
it's
you.
strange.
So let me ask you this: with with the slip wave, right? Can it also be used to slip in and out of dimensions, or only through or in and out of like space?
Well, I talk a little bit about that in the book. I do get into stargates, which uses high energy technology. But in order to build a Stargate, according to my reckoning, you
Mhm.
really have to use a metamaterial, which I hear they have and developed and used. And I know I've seen it on ResearchGate where I put my papers. People have claimed that they've developed a metamaterial that allows, when you shine light into it, for that light to move infinitely fast. And in order to do that, they have had to zero out permittivity and permeability. When those numbers go to zero, uh, then according to Maxwell's equation, the speed of light equals 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability, which are two properties of space having to do with the magnetic field and the electrostatic field. When those properties are zeroed out inside of this material, in theory, you can shine light in there and it can go infinitely fast. Now, physicists are arguing, oh, it's the group velocity versus the. infinitely fast. Something in there is doing it, and that's not
Right.
supposed to happen unless you do what they say they have done, which is created this material that has zero permittivity and permeability. So that has some very useful,
So
beneficial uh, mechanical
what kind
properties.
so what kind of material would this metamaterial, I mean, like, what is it, something that they've just kind of layered and put together, like they build it here? Like, I mean,
Yeah, it's a
out of
material science kind of thing. It's arrangement of of atoms and molecules so that you get the right electrical field configuration within the material, so that you can get this property. And what I think is that it's used. It's called.
would it be something that like what they had on the outside of the space shuttles that protected it, from coming in? Um,
Well,
you know,
UFOs supposedly use this metamaterial on the hulls of their ship. I could see where
okay.
it would help them move through space more efficiently,
So it would
and
make sense for them to be
it
using
would
UFO.
promote that field, the slipwave field around it. It would, make the thing more easily massless as it would look to the space around it.
Mhm.
And so it's of great benefit to have this property in any material you'll make that's going to go faster than the speed of light. It would provide no resistance to movement as long as it zeroes out the properties of. It would
Mhm.
do that except for the very edge of it. The perimeter, the outside of it would still have some mass, but I
Wow.
think they use that to in Stargate frameworks. They call it. There's a name for it, and I actually heard this idea and got it from a psychic that was trying to tell me the other side wants me to write a chapter on Stargates, and I told him, when I was talking to the psychic, my book wasn't complete yet. I was still a year or so away. I says, well, I'll do it, but I don't really know that much about Stargates. All I know is this: if you're going to build one of these, something that you project from it has to go beyond the speed of light. And the only way to go cut through time is you got to
Mhm.
be able to move beyond the speed of light. So, in order to get the particles, the light beams in the framework, and then coming out, you're going to super compress them because no matter what frequency they are, when they hit beyond the speed of light, it's going to compress them and pack those things full of energy, making it possible to rip open uh, uh, another dimension, a hole, or whatever. Not a wormhole, but another type of a dimensional void of some sort, so that you can step through from this dimension or this area into another area, like they do on the
Wow.
Stargate movies. So I know
Yeah.
the framework has to have fractal lenses. That's the term. And fractal lenses do actually exist and have
Wow.
been developed. So I'm sure they're using them to build the stargates. And so you can then accelerate that energy. And then the space, as the photons are coming out of the framework, they're highly compressed because now they're going beyond the speed of light. And that increases their energy dramatically. And this could be used to open the portal and
Wow.
create the Stargate, uh, along
That
with
is,
maybe.
I'm just like, this whole thing is, I don't know, I'm geeking out right now big time because this is also, you know, you just don't hear people talking about like, okay, it's like you hear people talking about conspiracies and conspiracy
Right.
theories and, oh yeah, the government probably already has it or this or, but you never hear anybody like yourself actually coming out really and giving detailed information of like, hey guys, Yeah,
Right.
and this is how it's happening, and this is how they're doing it, and it's absolutely
It's
possible, and
you've made a good point, and I think that all the time. All these other guys, all these government leakers, when you ask them about the specifics, how does this work? How does that work? They
Mhm.
come up empty-handed every time. How is it that nobody knows, uh,
Right,
other than Bob Lazar, the only
right,
guy that gave any technical information at all? The only one that I could find. I've talked, yeah, I think I've tried to talk to people who claim to have gone on board
mhm,
spaceships. Well,
mhm,
I'm not saying they haven't, because the ones that I think that I've interviewed, if there anybody's doing it's probably them.
right,
They're deliberately not being told about how that technology works.
because it's
Plus,
all
there's multi
compartmentalized, right?
well, e even the aliens aren't telling them, because, I'm pressing them for any information they have, and they said, "Well, that's just what the Men in Black wanted to know." They wanted to know if I knew uh, how the propulsion works, and I kept telling them, "I don't know, I don't know." And,
Mm,
that's what they wanna keep quiet. That's the number one secret. Nobody
mhm,
gets to know that because we wanna control that. We wanna control the world through this technology, and if we're
yes.
the only ones that know about it, then we're on top. So,
Spiritual Odyssey says, I think this is probably probably the reason. And be careful how you do it. Many patents have been confiscated by the government. There's a group tasked specifically to watch for free energy because free energy is not what they want. They don't want to give us free energy. If they gave us free energy, I mean, could you? I mean, the world we would be living in would be unbelievable. It would basically be practically utopia for everyone around the world if it was actually given freely to everyone. Sky's the limit for sure.
yeah, it would be a wonderful world for sure, and I can tell you, I know for sure that the power companies have patents. I know somebody that worked at one, and that person told me, "I've seen patents that'll change the world." And I asked the person, What are you doing about it? What are you doing?" "We just sit on them. We never use them." This is a fact. This I know for sure. So
Mhm,
I want everybody out there to understand they do have patents. They have been covered up, and the government helps them cover up those things because
mhm,
it's just like another cure, cure for cancer. It's never going to be found because it would bankrupt the medical system.
yep.
So they're never really going to out and out find, or even though there is some people out there that know of a way to treat cancer now, they're going to be pushed under the rug,
Mhm,
pushed down, kept quiet,
yep.
um, because cures is not something that this government or this economy wants anything to do with.
There's no money in the cure.
Mankind's worst enemy is mankind.
Yes, I
It's
agree.
not the aliens. It's not.
I
It's not.
agree.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I
it's
agree. It's
us.
not. It's not. It's not like other countries. It's just human beings, right? Like we just.
Yeah, because they're
Ah,
organizing across the world into some whatever you want to
mhm,
call it, a one world government or whatever.
yep.
They're, getting in line and saying, "Hey, we're in control. We're in charge. We got to keep this quiet. You got to work with us." So
Yep.
Brazil, when you have a crash there, we'll take over. We'll mop up. We'll clean it all up, and we'll cover it up. You just tell your people to keep their mouths shut, and don't tell them. Nobody talks. Nobody confirms there's aliens. Nobody confirms that there's anti-gravity and UFOs. We're just going to keep them in the dark. And what are they doing right now? They're
Yep.
basically saying, "Oh yeah, there's UFOs, but we don't know what they are."
Yeah.
Well, well, so there. It's another delay tactic, just basically keeping us in the dark.
Yes.
Eventually, what what they'll have to do, the government or the military really needs to have an enemy. and they'll eventually claim that some alien group is the new enemy, so they can justify at
Right.
whenever they need to that growing the military even stronger.
To
So
weaponize it. To
I mean,
weaponize it.
Werner von Braun predicted that decades ago. He said eventually we'll go through all the communists and different religious groups and whatever, all the different types of enemies that we can have, and when we've used them all up, the only one left is aliens. So that's why we see a lot of these movies,
Yes.
Independence Day and where aliens are these big monstrous bad guys that just want to come down and wreck everything. I got news for you. If they wanted to do that, they could have done it tens of thousands of years ago. They could have knocked us out when we were still playing with stone knives and bear claws. But they
Right.
haven't done anything then. They haven't done anything since then, or all the way
Right.
up to the current time. They have, yeah, there is no enemy, real enemy out there. Maybe there's some group
Crazy.
that's doing some illegal or immoral types of experimentation. I don't know. There's many races out there. They may not all be peaceful, but for the most part, I believe they are. And we're just in the dark trying to figure it all out. My role here in this whole business is to work out that technology. And while I'm at it, alert everybody to the fact that there is actually a God and there is actually a Jesus and there are angels and guardian angels and there is an afterlife. And, we're on an adventure here. And
Mhm.
my adventure is getting this all up and working, and science to rejoin with religion, because science really comes from religion. I mean, that's intelligent design in its purest form. Everything in this universe comes from the creator.
Yeah.
So that's my mission. That's what I believe, sent to do. At least that's what a lot of psychics keep telling me.
That's your calling. That's your calling. Brian
Yeah.
Barber has a question. He wants to know. So it comes down to vibration and frequency to construct the meta material.
Well, the metamaterial helps the vibration be super high. And of course, the vibration is frequency. So
Mhm.
and it does this by allowing the particles, in this case, photons or light particles, to pass through this material effortlessly, at a high rate of speed, so that you can create high frequencies. You need super high frequencies to get to the next dimension. It's been theorized that there's other universes and higher dimensions where the frequency of space is at a higher level. Uh, our matter and energy, I'm going to bring this thing into view. Our matter and energy vibrates in this form inside of neutrons and protons, and it vibrates at 99% the speed of light. So it's true that everything we experience here, we experience because things are vibrating. The matter that we are made of, the protons and neutrons, are actually vibrating quarks at a super high frequency, and those vibrations create the gravitational field and the magnetic field, and now everything becomes real and is detectable, because you have light, and light is can be sent into your eyes. It's converted by the brain and you get an image. Well, you can touch things with your hands and feel surfaces because of the motions and the vibrations of these particles inside of matter itself. All of this world, as Einstein said, nothing happens until something moves. Never
Mhm.
a deeper statement has ever been made than that. People have no idea of the depth of that statement, because without the motion of particles, we have no light, we can see nothing, We have no matter. We could feel nothing. Nothing would be detectable, sensible. Everything would go to black.
Yeah.
But because we have energetic particles always in motion, magnetism happens, electromagnetism happens, gravity happens, and now chemistry and all the other sciences start to work, biology, everything. It's like a giant dance within the mind of God, a ballet, you can imagine, where all these things are twisting, moving, turn in time. And we have time because there is space and everything makes sense. Everything is mechanical and there are no accidents. Everything was intentioned by the Father and everything is working right according to plan. So we're involved in this shared dream,
Hmm.
what we call our physical reality. And I'm just going over some of the physical details about how things work in the advanced state of, faster than light space travel, gravity, anti-gravity, stargates, time travel is unfortunately
Hmm.
possible. But these are the things that my mind works on right now. I gotta, a part of me would really like to just hang out at the beach and just, beachcomb. I love to walk the
Right.
beach. And but yet, I feel this obligation that I really got to push hard, push forward, and wrap this all up, wrap up this paper I've been working on for months now. Uh, get it all understood, get it documented, and hope somehow that I'm allowed to speak the truth and get it out there.
Yeah. Moon at Noon says we live in an electromagnetic universe. Gravity is just one frequency of that.
Uh, Basically, the theory of superrelativity breaks it down very similar to that. It starts with there's only one thing that exists in this universe, just one. And everything is made from that thing. And that thing is space itself, the ether. It's a quasi elastic solid. Particles are the electromagnetic vibrations or waves, and they are moving within the ether. When they move within the ether, they cause it to bend like this way, like that way, expand out and contract. Those are the
Mhm.
basic three-dimensional mechanical movements that were worked on in the 17 and 1800s by the best physicists in the world. Very sharp people who determined that the ether existed. Unfortunately for humanity, physicists messed everything up with the Michelson and Morley experiment that was designed to prove the ether, which failed to prove the ether because they didn't understand the experiment and how it was working. They totally misinterpreted uh, the thing that they were looking in that for in that experiment was called the ether wind. We thought for sure that as light traveled through space, it they wasn't realized that light speed was independent of all other motions. And to this day, physicists still don't want to acknowledge that. Um, but why I worked on this theory of the slip wave and to because it is very very important to understand that particles move and they move on their own. And how do they do this? And I thought, I can't be the only one that thought of this. Surely Einstein did. I went through his work looking for just a reference and I found it. In his unified field theory of gravitation and electricity, July 25th, 1925, here's what he says in the last two sentences. After he went through all that work of trying to figure out physical reality. He says, nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived. The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of motion for particles yet. He knew it. He knew how important that was. That's driving the entire universe. The motions of particles are driving the reality we live in. Remember what he said, nothing happens until something moves. He wanted to figure out how it moves, how those particles do it on their own. They don't
Mhm.
have little jetpacks. They're moving them around. Somehow they magically are doing this. That's what this paper I'm writing on explains in high detail. It's probably going to take around 50 or more pages of math and explanation to get this out so that people could understand it, hopefully. I don't know, my head is spinning when think about it right now, but
And
uh,
it's probably going to take an entire team of people to try to figure it. You know what I mean? Like to actually like understand what you're trying to tell them. Because I don't think that because I feel like
it's hard to talk about.
everything that we've been taught our whole lives have been not correct. Either not correct or we only know up to this point. We
Well,
don't know anything past that, you
physicists
know?
would never have gotten to modern day physicists are not allowed to think like I've talked about tonight, classical field theory. It doesn't work that way. They use quantum mechanics. So
Mhm.
what hope do we have of solving the unified field theory when everybody's putting a ladder on the building, trying to climb up to the top of the building
Right.
to get to the truth, when in fact everybody's putting the ladder on the wrong building? So they're
Perfect
never,
way.
ever going to solve the problem using quantum
Yes.
mechanics. And so
Perfect
everybody's kept in the
explanation.
dark. Yeah, they're all kept in the dark. And the government says, oh, yeah, I will give you money to research string theory. They know nothing has to
That's
do. It's a total waste of time. Waste
right.
your life. Make all those equations you want. You'll never find the unified field theory using string theory, and you'll never find it using quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics, basically, the standard model is about particle to particle interaction, collision. That's not what space and reality is all about. What really is important is particle to space interaction. Particles move through space, they create fields. Fields are fields of force. You have action at a distance, chemistry works, physics works. All of this because particles moving through space. Now I'm about to explain how those particles move. And the big secret is the one that nobody saw coming. Particles move because of a gravitational field that they set up internal to themselves. With the drawing I showed you, there's a tiny gravitational field, an attractive field at one end and a repulsive at the other, that causes that particle to move. Einstein couldn't derive the equation because I'll guarantee you he never saw another form of gravity and anti-gravity. So he couldn't have possibly, in his time, figured out the
Figured it
equations
out.
for motion because he
Right.
was trying to use just electromagnetic
Yeah.
explanation, which is what I used at first, which never quite clicked with me, but
Right.
that's all I had. Um, it's
Um,
a huge breakthrough.
a spiritual odyssey. I have a few questions that I starred for you. So, a spiritual odyssey wants to know how do you feel what CERN is doing in Europe? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about CERN?
It's the whole the whole project with particle accelerators. What do? They cleverly take particles, they create them using different methods, then they shoot them around in a ring, and they both go in a separate direction, and kaboom, they collide them, and then they use quantum mechanics equations to determine the probabilities that we're going to get one that looks like this, we're going to get a particle that looks like that, and we're going to get them so many times so often, and that all adheres to a strict probability set of equations that use approximately 26 to 27 ad hoc tuning parameters. What are those? They're numbers used to get the right answer, because they don't get the right answer otherwise, and they don't even know what those numbers mean or what. So the whole
So how
system is
so
set.
they don't understand what they're doing.
Uh,
I mean, they understand what they're doing, but they don't really understand the repercussions of what they're doing.
well,
Would that be a true statement? Or
it's just like they've got their own system worked out where it works for them. Well,
mhm,
they get to go in every day. They get paid a good salary to work on these equations, crank up this machine to confirm their equations for a new particle type, right? They live
mhm,
and die by discovering new particles, and then
right.
they try to put that in the model, a senseless model that's got hundreds and hundreds of particles that really are details that don't really have any meaning in our reality. The the only particles we should be really focusing on are the ones that don't decay into some, the stable ones, gluons and inside of neutrons and protons, electrons, neutrinos, and positrons and electrons. The basic building blocks that are stable. Those are the guys where all the action's at. All this other stuff of finding all these new particles that supposedly do all these other new things, it's
Mhm,
just a money making racket for the physicists who get to have champagne parties every time they find a new particle. So their whole focus
yeah,
is, let's find a new particle and we'll get the Nobel Prize. And everybody's happy, like the Higgs particle. They never saw the Higgs, it never made it to the detector. They got so desperate to find it, they said, well, what if it had products that it decayed into? If it did exist, we'll go look for those. And what they did is randomly they would find this every once in a while and declare that was a Higgs. We didn't see it, but it must be because there's the products. But other thing collisions create the same products, so it's a
wow.
big farce. It's what do I think is CERN? I think the best minds in the business are playing around with their big erector set toy,
Mhm,
and they're wasting their lives and our money when they should be doing what Einstein did, continue his work, continue the classical fields theory, and reprove the existence of the ether. And I know how to do it. It could be done at CERN, and it has happened there. And they just didn't realize they were seeing evidence of the ether. Uh,
mhm,
I went a while back and I thought, you know, the Michelson-Morley experiment, the interferometer experiment, didn't work because light doesn't matter. You can't change its speed. It's not like something like you go on a train and you shine a flashlight, and the velocity of light is not the train speed plus the flashlight speed. It's just the speed coming out of the flashlight. It matters not which way you're going or whatever. So that experiment could have never detected an ether wind. What you needed to use is a particle that has mass, so that the mass will be slowed down and affected by motions of the emitters and receivers of the frame, other frames of motion reference. So that's that experiment could be done in the tunnels that go around in a circle. And so the earth is spinning and it's going through space, and all those velocities are going to affect the speed of that beam, because that beam motion is external. They need to use fields of force to move the particles around. So those particles are being moved externally. That means the ether wind, the motion of the earth through the ether, will be detectable if we monitor that particle beam. And we see more than likely in the east and west tunnels
mhm.
that it's going to be off in December, January. Why December, January? Because that's when the speed of the Earth is fastest, it's closest to the sun. So it's going to be moving the fastest. More than likely, you add up all the velocities there, you're going to get a significant change, enough to be detectable. And what will they will see is that the timing of the tunnel beams goes off every December, January. So I looked one summer. I says, I wonder if these guys ever complained about the timing and the beams of the CERN. And sure enough, this one guy in maintenance department says, "Damn it! Every year in late December, early January, I have to realign the damn beam timing." And they blamed it on groundwater. No, it's not the groundwater. It,
I know. For you, you're just like, that is just so simple and easy, and they should know this, right? If
yeah,
you
but they're
Well,
taught never to think like that. So
yeah. Well, Jean has a question, and she just wants to know, why does the everyday Joe need to know and understand this theory? Thank you.
yeah, I get that question quite a bit, and including it comes from my daughter who asked me as well. And it's important because we need to know the truth, and people want to know how things
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
Not everybody. Uh, it's true, you don't really need to know that if you're going to stay in the basic Earth illusion, where you're worried mainly about what you're going to eat tonight and who's going to win American Idol and who's going to win the Super Bowl. If you're into that mindset, you don't need to know all of this stuff because it's just not a part of how you function in your way of life. But for the people who want to know, and there's a growing number who want to know what's really going on here,
Mhm.
what's really happening, how things actually work, this is important stuff for them to know because it's not just about flying faster than the speed of light and anti-gravity and a great discovery. It's about realizing the picture that we're in isn't just about Earth and our little trivial concerns and stuff here. The picture is much bigger. We're spiritual beings on a physical journey, and
Yes.
solving those problems and getting that knowledge and information is part of what our duty is, to
Mhm.
figure all this stuff out, make sense of it, and make the world a better place. Because ultimately, knowing all this information will allow us to build starships. The starships will allow us to meet civilizations from other worlds. We'll have exchange of information, learn more about God. uh, the whole world becomes
Mhm.
a much, much better place when the truth finally comes out.
Yeah. Um, we have another question from Brian Barber. Will the laws of the unified gravity theory hold up when traveling near a black hole? Regular physics currently fall apart near the event horizon.
Yeah, that's a Schwarzschild child solution. It seems to break down, and it's led to much more great confusion in the world of physics. Uh, the black hole is not nearly as complicated as they have made it out to be. It's not a wormhole. I'll tell you exactly what it is. My theory, cosmology theory, tells us exactly what a black hole is. A black hole is just a very super dense, very heavy, large neutron sphere rotating.
Mhm.
Uh, when and this is a topic for another discussion, the whole cosmology theory. So, because basically this is vitally important to know. So, I can make a claim right now that our sun has a neutron star inside of it. Every star has a neutron sphere inside of it. And when they blow up and have become supernovas, they reveal that there's a neutron star in it. And in the case of a super large star, 8 times more mass or more than the sun, when it blows up, it's going to be a black hole. What I'm saying is the black hole was what formed the star in the first place by gathering gases, compressing them.
Mhm.
They start to glow. The next thing you know, you have another star. What I'm saying is black holes and neutron stars are the seeds of the universe. They came about from the Big Bang. So black holes is not that complicated. It's just a super large neutron star made of solid neutronium with an immense gravitational field, which is necessary to gather the hydrogen, create the atmosphere, and start the fusion process. Without it, you could never get a star built. So, my claim tonight is what you've just heard is the real cause of star formation, the real cause of planet formation. Is I believe within the Earth, we have a small neutronium sphere that's creating fusion process why the earth is never cooled because fusion is still happening at the center of the earth. And
Oh,
unfortunately for us, it's a fairly large neutronium sphere that we got in there, and it's overheating the core. And it makes it even more important that we find and get the arc system going, the, which is necessary just in case this planet goes south and we have a major eruptions or major tectonic problems that I'm sure we've had in the past that could
which
create
is which is why the slip wave would be important because we need that technology. We need
to
that to get off
survive.
the planet if we need to get
Right.
off the planet.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
Yes,
that's a real
yes,
legitimate, solid reason, and that has been my
exactly.
motivation because I know about the core problem.
Yeah,
And there's nobody
amazing.
else out there even close except for one guy in Japan who theorized that there's fusion going on inside of the earth. And I talked with him. I says, you're right. There is fusion. And did you point the detector at the center of the earth? He says, yeah, we did. And sure enough, there's neutrinos, earthborn neutrinos coming from the center of the earth. That is a strong indicator that fusion is going on in the center of our planet, and fusion
Wow.
burns hot, and it's not going to cool off anytime soon. So we could be in serious trouble. We need this technology. We need to start building starships, and we need to find another planet that'll allow some of us to stay there without,
Yeah.
you know, creating a war
Wow.
problem. No more
Mark,
manifest destiny.
yeah, this has been amazing. Again, you've been able to bring it, the truth. And I mean, everybody that comes to my channel, watches my channel, we're all truth seekers. And thank you for sharing truth with us. You know, um, I know it's super technical, and I know that it's a little hard to digest for a lot of us, for most of us. But thank you for kind of like getting it down to our level so we can start to think in these correct ways, ways that we're not used to thinking about some of these things that we talked about tonight. And
Right.
so I appreciate so much that you've come here and you're sharing this knowledge, you're sharing your work, your life's work with us, and it really means a lot. And I just love and
Well,
blessings, my friend.
thank you. I will keep you updated. I'll put you on my email list when that paper comes out. I'll let you know that it's out. And I'm still debating whether I put the program on the internet somewhere for free and let people play
Yeah,
with it and see if they can design their own. I really need them to do that.
that would
So I
be great
probably will.
to,
Yeah, I
to
probably will do that.
crowdsource. Yeah, you never
Yeah,
know what could come
because
from it.
I use a tuning parameter and I won't know if it's exactly right until somebody builds some of the designs and they measure the force. When I know the force or the velocity that's achieved,
Mhm.
then I'll know how to set my tuning parameter perfectly. That's just what Newton did. What do you think? He knew what the gravitational constant was? They had to measure it, And he took a guess and put it in the middle between the two. Still, we don't know what the gravitational constant really means, but
Mhm.
everybody uses tuning parameters, and I wound up, sadly, I had to do it too. But that's just the way it is, and I'm not going to feel too bad about it.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's just, again, I can't tell you. I feel like I'm every time that this is your second time on. We have another show we're going to do in a couple of weeks. We are going to get into a lot more detail about stargates and how they work. We're going to talk about that. But every
Okay.
time you're here, like, just, you know, the energy, the vibes, the good vibes, the positive energy that you have, and you just have this calling that you are following your heart, and you are just doing it. And I just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Oh, you're
thank you.
welcome. I appreciate your appreciation.
All right, so I am gonna put you backstage for just a minute while I say goodnight to everybody, and
Okay.
then I will be with you in just a moment. Wow, guys, that was so fun. I geek out on stuff like this. You guys know me by now. I geek out. I love all this technical, amazing, awesome stuff. That truth. Truth seekers, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you're a part of my channel, and I really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you all for being here tonight and sharing this space and time with me and Mark. And I do have just a couple announcements. I do have, so tomorrow night, please make sure you guys are here tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I have Daniel Benoit, who will be here from Bigfoot Zone. He's a researcher out of Virginia, the state of Virginia. And also with him is going to be Michael James from Forest Monsters. So they are both going to be here with me tomorrow night. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about a lot of Bigfoot. And I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy that. And I have for you guys a couple of surprises for the next week, and I'm not going to just announce them just yet. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy that. But until tomorrow night, until the next time, please remember to spread love and kindness wherever you go.